Again, I'm very deeply honored to welcome the former Vametco workers who are with us here today, and then also to welcome the students from all the three institutions from the United States, Smith College, the Wesley College, the Barnard College, and also to include also other institutions that are sort of been contributing towards the success of this organization. We have the Northfield Institute in the United States under the leadership of Marsha, and then we have also Kerry Productions that have also contributed towards this, and then Kerry Production together with Danny Glover, who are hoping one day we should be able to do a movie around the plight of the former Vametco workers. It is against this partnership and background that we need to acknowledge this contribution from these institutions. We are aware that these institutions are led by various leadership. They are professors from Smith College, and then they are professors also from the Barnard College, and then I think we'll deal more in details when they do the introduction as to who is here from the United States, and we'll also deal with who is here from South Africa side. Now, that is the key issue on that one, and probably we are going to deal with the background as to why we're here, what is the purpose of being here, and what we hope to achieve probably by tomorrow afternoon. So before then, I think we need to deal with the question of the introduction so that we settle to understand who is here and what their role and what will be the possible contribution. We see this as a partnership. We not see it as United States on the other side and South African on the other side. We see this as nations coming together, because partnership between nations, if they are deeply rooted within societies and civil society, ordinary men and women, such partnership between countries bound to give the desired results. And I hope that failure for us here is not an option. Our option is success. We've got very clumsy choices to choose between failure and success. And I think all of us will contribute towards success, not failure. And with that, I will then deal with the second issue and ask Marsha and the chair just to deal with the question of the introduction. Thank you.
My name is Kendra Tappan. I'm a junior at Barnard College, and I'm a history major. And the issues around this that particularly interest me are those about the women, those things that they address in their daily lives and their family lives, and also things about labor rights and labor activism.
My name is Alexandria Wright, and I'm also going to be a junior at Barnard College. And my major is philosophy, and my minor is women's studies. And I'm also interested in the women, just hearing their side of the story, what's going on with them in the situation, and also bringing a philosophical aspect to that.
Hi, my name is Haley Holmes, and I'm going to be a junior at Barnard in the fall. I'm a double major in foreign area studies and politics, and a minor in economics and Spanish literature. And
so after introductions,
here I'm going to be doing research along with my other Barnard girls, and I'm going to focus in on sort of like the hindrances that have prevented civil society from being able to aggregate its interests and sort of achieve its goals regarding sort of action with the mineral and the mining issues.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Severino, and I'm a junior at Barnard College. I'm a chemistry major, and I'm interested in examining the scientific issues around vanadium poisoning.
My name is Masolela, as former Vametco worker. Hello everybody. I'm Benedict Subone. I'm also a former Vametco employee.
Hi, my name is Audrey Brown, and I'm a journalist. And because I'm a journalist, I'm curious about everything and everybody.
Now back in the program, and again my responsibility, there is copies of the program next to you there, and there will be adjustment on the program. And just quickly also on the program, what you're going to hear, myself and Marsha, we're going to try and give you the background and the history of the relationship between the South African partnership and the United States partnership. We're going to go back, because we connected a couple of few years ago through the assistance of the former Vametco workers. Again, we remain honored indebted to the former Vametco workers. We hope that whatever that we'll be doing here, it can benefit them.
Yes.
We're here as individuals, they are here as victims. And for us, it's important that in the process, we're going to have to sober up and devise ways and means of how best can we contribute to the struggle. That collaboration will start here, and surely myself and Masha will spend a few minutes, 10 minutes, and then from there share that with you so that we set the tone and the background. And there will be participation by asking questions on the history where we're coming from. Thereafter, we have the former Vametco workers who will then make presentation. They will set the tone for the conference. They'll share their life experience at Vametco. We've asked them, they had general meeting with the workers. We couldn't bring all the workers to this conference. We had to bring the leadership of this conference. There is also one or two that will be joining us. They are on their way here. But I think more importantly, after that one, we will then get into some discussions and clarity issues. Then from there, we hope that from either here in the country or from the United States, we'll try and trace the history of Strategic Mineral. Strategic Mineral is based in the United States, and it's a company that's sort of like responsible. It got some movement that moved from the United States to Bhopal, and those who know the disaster in Bhopal, and from there it landed into South Africa. So we're talking about dangerous operations that have been dumped in our country and causing havoc. But again, hopefully that from the former Vametco workers, they'll share with us, analyzing their own company from their own perspective. And then we can all add toward that perspective to produce the full picture of that company. And there is one South African attorney who is highly respected, who handled the asbestos cases. His name is Richard Spoor. He's going to join us tomorrow, and then he's dealing with the case still of asbestos in Kuruman, 5 hours drive from here. So he'll be joining us tomorrow morning. So that is exactly the program for today. And we'll also try and look into linking up the question of the environmental impact, because we have farmers who are black farmers who have lost livestock because of the waste that has been released from the company damaging the environment. Okay. So that is sort of like the background on today, and I just want to take this program by chance. I think it's written in English. We avoided writing it in Tswana because we know that if we write it in Tswana, we'll have difficulties. And I think from the Vametco workers and the former workers and then South Africans, we know that our rule here is that we normally will speak on our language so that you express yourself properly. There will be somebody who will translate in English so that you can get the best of the own work. Because, English is not our language. We speak other languages, so if we continue making errors in English, it's not by wish, it's not by design, it is because we've got other preferences of other languages. So you'll guide us as we continue through English. So, comrades, Okay. So that's basically the trying to again put it in Tswana so that we understand where we're going to. So colleagues, I don't want to get deeper into the program. I think the program is straightforward. And then I think we would rather spend time in trying to share with you where I met this young lady here, Masha Coleman-Adebayo. And I'll try and spend a few minutes sharing with you. And then from there, Masha will give a version. And then from there, the workers of former Vametco, they will then set the tone as to where we're coming from. Again, without waste of time, in 1996, when I was still an activist and under the banner of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, together with Comrade Violet Molutsi here, I arrived from Johannesburg and I was deployed to come and work in the Bretts area. And I was then confronted by the situation of the former Vametco workers who were dismissed in 1990. Vametco, as a company, was situated in the old Bob area, Buputa Tswana. We had the homeland system in our country, and those doing politics, later on you'll be able to trace this history. Those involved in African history and politics, you pick that one up. That was, if anybody else ever thought the South African white regime was more brutal, that one was one most vicious and very brutal. And this company was placed in that area of that homeland. And the brutality of that homeland, they didn't allow anything else free to be said or to be active. So when the workers there raised the issues of worker rights, the issues of how vanadium impacts on them, they were dismissed. And they were dismissed without any recourse, because there was no law in that so-called country that could give them a hearing. And in South Africa, in the old apartheid regime, you will at least have a hearing, even if you will not succeed necessarily on your case. In that one, trade unions were not recognized by law. They were made illegal. The moment you say, I'm a trade union member, I've got a problem, you are dismissed. You can't go to any court because the court didn't recognize that. So that's where and how I got involved in this area. And when the former workers came to the union offices, they found me there together with the leadership of the union, and they told me the story in a case which was almost like an old case, 1990, and here am I in 1993, and then we need to deal with this issue. It was around about 1996. We then had to get together. The story was painful, was depressing, was more brutal. And through the progressive forces, there was an organization called an Environmental Justice Network, which was in partnership with COSATU as part of the progressive movement. We then became part of Thabo Mbeki, our current president now, with Al Gore, who was the deputy president now in the United States with Bill Clinton. We had this binational commission between the two countries. And I was fortunate to join other 7 government officials and other 2 non-governmental organizations. We went to Boston and Washington, D.C. on the brief between these 2 countries, the partnership. It was at governmental level, and then our role was to go and look into a commission that was dealing with environment. There were many other commissions dealing with different issues, politics, economics, science, and all other areas. So that's how, when landed in Boston, I met with Marsha. And my mandate was to brief the American institutions and organs of civil society in the United States on the plight of the former Vametco workers. There was then in South Africa a center called National Center for Occupational Health. This center produced 2 reports saying there is no link between the death of these workers and their workplace. And the patterns of people dying were the same, and then the illnesses were the same, symptoms were the same. And then we could understand because they were operating under the old apartheid regime and supported by the old Bob regime. So where scientists will have to first get management green light to say, can I write this thing right? And then if the management is not happy, then it's not written, it's written accordingly. So those were the issues that confronted us. So, but down in the United States, I campaigned strongly on behalf of the mandate of the former Vametco workers, and we developed a strong tie and relationship with Marshall. And then other guy, I think people know Professor Willett Johnson, who is one strong anti-apartheid activist in the United States. He was with the MIT and now retired. And then very, very strong. Together with Marsha, they then led our team. And I can say from that onwards, we had a lot of great relationship, and we benefited both intellectually, socially, and otherwise. And I think what came out of that report, apparently, and then I just picked up recently, there was an agreement when the report was finally submitted. American government at Bill Clinton level and at our President Thabo Mbeki's level endorsed the report and the recommendation which were made. And I just picked up because I left Brett's immediately from United States. Then I had to take up another job in government. So since that 5 years ago, I was disjointed with the comrades. And I'm now again being called, again duty calling me to reconnect again. And I've taken this couple of few days to share with the comrades again and to make sure that this case rests in the correct hands. Let me retire now and then thanks. And we get Marsha's perspective. Yes. And then from there, then you can interact only on this matter. Okay. Then from there, we go to the comrades. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just asking my dear sister if she would mind if I sat down and talked.
No problem.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I thank God for this day because I truly believe that when people come together, really great things can happen. And I've seen it throughout my entire life that when people come together who are really passionate about justice, that we can really move mountains. And I think today's activities is really an indication of just that sort of spirit that I hope we're going to generate here and that we're going to be able to continue when we leave this place. So first let me in terms of being totally and completely, I need to disclose some information here. I'm a Barnard alumni. And so first allow me to thank my college. It's been absolutely very supportive. President Judith Shapiro and Diane Dietrich, thank you very much for heading up the Barnard group. And Tim, thank you so much. And Dean Vivian Taylor, who we wish could be here but couldn't, and also Dean Blank. So we thank the entire community at Barnard that really pulled together within a very short period of time to make this possible. On the Smith-Wellesley side, I'd like to thank Alan Bloomgarten, who also couldn't make it. But I spoke at Smith, I think in November, at a meeting on women whistleblowers. I am a whistleblower. I blew the whistle on the fact that Union Carbide had killed the workers here in Brits. And a lot of things happened as a result of that, but it's one of the proudest moments of my life, quite frankly. And so I spoke at Smith, and I told a bit of the story of the METCO at Smith, and as a result, Smith and Wellesley students are now sitting in Brits. And so I am so grateful to Smith College for hearing what I had to say, and not only hearing what I had to say, but then putting your resources behind this activity. So we are indebted to you, and we thank you so much. And I understand that in September there's going to be another meeting at Smith, and we're hoping that some of my dear brothers and sisters here can join us at Smith so that we can continue to tell the story, which I can assure you will not die. And also Mickey Glazer, who I think chairman of the Environment Committee or the Environment Department there. So I thank all of you from Smith and Wellesley College. I'd also like to thank Danny Glover, who really wanted to be here today. These connections just keep growing and they keep solidifying, and that's really what this conference is all about. And of course, Jocelyn Barnes, who is the screenwriter for the movie, which will be produced in a couple of years, which will tell the story in part of Vanadium workers and what happened here, the crimes against humanity that happened here in Brits. Would also just like to acknowledge my wonderful daughter, Sade, who I think feels very much like you do. Yes, it's really true. If she told the truth, yeah, she's saying yes, it's true. So I think she's very, Tyler, thank you for saying what she was feeling, and I think you sort of articulated her feelings exactly. Thank you also to the former and current VMETCO workers. We thank you for allowing us to participate in your struggle. We consider it a great honor that you've invited us into your lives and into your communities, and that you're allowing us to hold hands with you as we fight this incredible battle. Because your battle is not just your battle, our battle is also yours. And so we thank you for this honor of participating in this struggle. And of course we have this unbelievable leadership of Jacob and Gukani and Violet and Sally and Moses and people you haven't met yet, but eventually you will, who have really spent the last 5-10 years fighting this battle, often very isolated, but just never gave up. So I thank everyone for this. This is a very, very, very important meeting. It's an important meeting because whenever crimes of humanity take place, the only way these crimes can remain silent crimes is if good people don't speak out about them. And so we're all taking part in a very important process, and that is that we're witnessing the fact that people are no longer going to remain silent about victimization. And whether that victimization takes place in the workplace or it takes place at home, the first step in fighting that victimization is to begin to speak out. I was the executive secretary for the Gore and Becky Environment Committee. The Coleman-Adebayo Commission the formal name is the U.S. South Africa Binational Commission. And it was the flagship foreign policy vehicle between the United States and South Africa. And our goal in the Coleman-Adebayo Commission was to provide some concrete positive support to the new Mandela government. Our goal was to meet with the South African leadership every 6 months and to listen to the new government tell us, in terms of the United States, how we could assist them in the transition from apartheid to independence. And so my job was to work with the Department of Environment and Tourism and to be the liaison between the United States and the South African government and to help them develop, to the extent possible, the resources, or transfer the resources from the United States to South Africa to help them with this transition period. In the process of my work, I organized a study tour group, and we brought members of the new South African environmental leadership, government as well as NGOs, to the United States. Another disclosure is that I went to MIT, and so I took them to MIT because MIT happens to have an enormous amount of resources in terms of environmental education and just technology development. And Jacob was a member of the first delegation that came from South Africa to the United States. And I must tell you, he stuck out from the very beginning. Even at the airport, I think he said to me, "My name is Jacob Mbukani, and I work with the METCO workers, and we're trying to fight vanadium poisoning in South Africa." Those are not his exact words, but it was pretty close. So as soon as I met Jacob, I knew that he was a man on a mission. I didn't understand the mission. I didn't even know what vanadium was, to be honest with you. So when he first started talking about vanadium, my eyes started glazing over because I had no idea what he was talking about. But it didn't take very long because of his passion for me to understand that this was a very important issue and that we needed to really pay attention to what Jacob was talking about. Well, as you all know, one of the legacies of apartheid is that black life was very cheap. It was very much like black life was considered in the South during slavery. We were expendable commodities. When we wore out, we were replaced. Well, very similarly in South Africa, when vanadium workers became ill, they were they began to protest. As in 1990, they were just simply replaced, just like you replace something that doesn't work anymore. You just replace it with something which you consider something newer. And so the vanadium workers here in Brits were really caught between some very, very difficult circumstances. Not only were they victims of the legacy of apartheid, which said that black people didn't count except as units of labor, but they were also really being squeezed by a major U.S. multinational corporation. Now we'll talk about sort of this history of the corporate trail, but essentially we're looking at corporations like Union Carbide, which is now sort of morphed into IBM, which is morphed into Strategic Minerals. I mean, you can sort of trace all these ways that these corporations morph themselves, particularly after Bhopal in India. You begin to see how they begin to change names, but the basic profit motive remains the same. So this project, in a way, is a very curious outcome of the Coleman-Adebayo Commission. It's curious because there was a provision that we had discussed in the Coleman-Adebayo Commission that we were going to send an independent team to South Africa, to Brits, because of Jacob's recommendation, to determine why were these workers who were being employed technically, or maybe in a loose form, by a U.S. corporation, why were they getting sick? We heard about the water pollution problems from Jacob. We heard about the fact that the workers were suffering from all kinds of cancers and different problems. And as a U.S. government and as a part of a binational, we needed to know, was a U.S. corporation responsible for these kinds of illnesses and these kinds of deaths which were being reported by someone we had brought from South Africa who was telling us these issues? Well, when I started talking about these issues, and in fact, we actually did get a resolution. You're absolutely right that we were going to send an independent team. But when I tried to implement those orders, I was stopped.
But one of the things that can be done is that if consumers take it upon themselves that they will not buy materials from companies that abuse their power, then it might work a little better, because the problem with transnational companies in the developing world is that their countries are not like willing to be harsh upon the foreign companies due to obvious reasons. So governments don't want to get involved at this level, especially at the business level.
I think it may be, part of that might be the evidence that was available and so on. Like the asbestos case, to make the case and to support so that South Africa, since this was a US company, and they may have got that support from the Clinton-Gore group, but they were not going to get that support.
Actually, I don't know, because when Marsha was working for her, who shut her down? And I think it's fair to say that the same corporate interests control both parties.
Oh, right, the unions. That's perfect.
I mean,
and when we were at Bobson, you can't get a union which can operate there. So we just closed 1990 because government helped us. No one was interested. Even Mr. Ngakane was lost for almost 5 years, not knowing where he was. Getting the whole information, and the whole information was still at his side. When we get there last time at the summit, he just showed that he can help us because he has the whole information. That's why we are here today.
So there's no money for resources?
We have no money.
There's a Swiss mine owned by a company called Xstrata. There was a big case that took place, and Richard Spoor, who's coming tomorrow, the lawyer, is coming to talk about it. It went all the way through Parliament.
And what else? And awareness, which could include anything from like trying to get your schools of journalism involved.
Anything else for the third term?
Fundraising. We talk about fundraising.
Yeah, that'll go under monetary. So okay, long-term goals.
Counseling.
Is that under medical?
Technology is being used in other places, trying to find out maybe the history of sort of like I don't know, like right now things are so like just pieces of a puzzle as opposed to an entire picture. I think just to get a coherent picture in terms of documenting the history of vanadium, its uses and where it came from. Exactly.
Were you thinking of psychological help in terms of short-term or long-term?
Long-term.
Okay. So we're gonna do
and long-term psychological help. Yeah.
It's all
environmental.
Okay.
And also documenting about vanadium and how it's affected your community.
Yeah, just getting good, clean statistics together in paperwork.
Start working in the mine, so telling kids about, the medical, just educating the children about it.
That's what he said. They're not aware that they have a right for a lawyer, for example.
But I think at least if they're educated about, the effects of it, then they can be more active to make it better while they're there. You know what I mean?
Conditions in the plant have several kinds of effects. So they affect the workers by invading their skin and their lungs and their noses and their eyes and everything else, right? But they also affect the earth. They affect the air because of the dust. They affect the water. And then the miners themselves go home with the pollution on them, and they potentially affect
the children,
the wives and the children, who are also affected by the earth and the water. And so it's a great big diagram.
I used to shower, become clean, and wear my clothes. But when I got home and slept, the following day when I woke up, you'll see the blackness on my sheets. When I sweat in the blanket.
From your sweat? Into your pores,
We had a black women's health conference because they were concerned about health issues related to black women. And just at the conference, one person stood up and said, well, I would like to donate some money. And then they ended up, many people at the conference donated right there, and they had a fund that could go immediately to help people. So that might be something to think about, as there are lots of different ways to try to help the people, and that might be one of them.
I think probably research about labor rights in terms of what the entitlements of the workers should be, like compare it to other mines in South Africa, not necessarily just vanadium, because
the consequences of mining vary in different mines and different things that are being mined. But compare and see what the other mines where people, protested against the way they were being treated, what their benefits were, how they were treated.
In other countries, vanadium is mined more safely. But I don't know how much of that information do we have command of within this effort, because that's definitely an area of research.
I would also be interested in research that we've said this, but that focuses on trying to find out as much as we can about the long-term health risk and looking, as you were saying, charting what happens to someone and what kinds of medical resources can be used to help make people's lives better once they've been affected by vanadium.
Also, I've been wondering this all day. While what's called the name of the company? Vametco is refusing access to records and data and to make an assessment of the site. Surely this has been done elsewhere. So gathering the information that exists about vanadium as a health risk everywhere else is surely the first step in building that case.
Well, your question is why they haven't gathered the information?
Well, I don't know for sure that they haven't, but...
Well, vanadium was mined in the United States at one point.
So you could probably
look at that
from the EPA because the Clean Air Act disallowed you from using it anymore. So
that would be a good place, I guess.
To start.
The EPA. While you were working, were you examined intermittently in between different periods of time? Did they take you again to doctors to be examined to see if you were becoming sick? And then did they use that as a way to fire you from your job, saying that you're no longer fit to work here? Or did they only fire you when you reported that you were sick, that something happened to you?
Yes, when they hire you, they make sure that you are fit. And then you enter the company, you work. While working, you start inhaling the dust. You start getting into contact with the whole situation inside the company. Then you can go to the doctor when you feel sick, you see. But when you come with a medical doctor, sometimes they used to say they don't accept the medical certificates from black doctors. They say, no, he's a cover doctor. They can't accept his medical certificate. So you must always go to their doctor, who will sometimes, when you are sick, he'll say you are not sick. Continue working. We don't like the company to close, but to modernize their operations so that pollution can be brought to a minimum, and to compensate the people that have been unfairly dismissed. That's all we want the company to do. Because by closing them, we will be increasing the unemployment rate of our country.
As much as possible, to what degree the workers today are suffering from the ailments that the miners that we've heard from, the green tongue and the phlegm and these kinds of maladies, are they prevalent, to the same degree? Because we've had 10 years, right, or more I guess I'm wondering if the company has done anything, either publicly or not, to try and improve the conditions of the miners, and whether they've taken any of these initiatives themselves, or whether NUM has managed to sort of push them along in some kind of progress.
Time in the mine, because it's a long time we have left the company 13 years ago. I still remember at times there's a certain plant, is called a filter plant. There's a barrette, a long barrette like this, it's a glass pipe. It's used to suck the sulfuric acid from a beaker to, I can call my other comrade to clarify. Le testa pH ya sulfuric acid. It's a pipette. Pipette, yes. They used to suck the sulfuric acid from the beaker through that barrette. Can you imagine what the steam of that acid can do to your tongue, to your respiratory organs?
What are the chemicals that you're inhaling with the pipette? What are the chemicals? Just the sulfuric acid?
Yes. Then from there you must get the correct picture of how's the plant running.
And how many men are working at this? Like, if it's one man for 8 hours a day?
Assistant operator, it's always testing that. Operator is just looking if you do it.
And how long are your shifts?
For 8 hours.
So you do that for 8 hours a day?
Every hour. Every hour you must take it.
Is it only done by an assistant operator?
Assistant operator only. Operator, if ever the assistant is not there,
he's not going to do that?
It must make it.
Okay.
And in the event of his relief not coming, he must do it for 16 hours. Then he must come and replace him. Maybe he's ill. He sent a doctor's note. Then he must continue another 8 shifts to making it 16 shifts in a row.
Second sulfuric acid.
I have a question for Philip. You're testing where are you getting the sulfuric acid? Is that from the mixture of vanadium with vanadium? I mean, are you just testing sulfuric acid, or is it the sulfuric acid?
It's not sulfuric acid only.
Okay, with the vanadium.
It's mixed with.
Because vanadium, in order to leach it out or precipitate it, it has to be a certain.
Right, that's right. Okay. Alex is pointing out that, I mean, you're adding the sulfuric acid because you need to change the pH of the mixture to a certain value.
Yes.
In order to get the most vanadium out.
That's right.
Did you have some people to get, what, did you get burned?
I get bronchitis and everything when I test it. My tongue get bluish or green in color. So I can say that powder or that sulfuric acid, if ever they can pour it with you, you can scrub the whole surface.
Yeah.
So what about sucking it?
You accidentally sucked it.
Yeah, it comes inside, so inside I can't see what happened inside my chest.
And when you sucked it accidentally already?
Yes, but if ever I suck it accidentally, I just put the water and pour it out.
And what did it taste like?
It hits inside.
It's saying it's hot. Is it hot? Was it? I mean, does it burn you?
It burns inside.
Then what about getting short breath? Are you getting short breath when you suck it, or?
Yes, it's a short breath.
And then if no one's relieving you and then you're doing that for 16 hours, how do you manage?
Just for I want money, that's why I'm sucking it.
So how long can you do that job?
And the supervisors won't let him go because
for 8 hours.
Then no attendant.
For the whole year.
You do it for 1 year.
For the whole year, or for your whole of your contract. For the whole of your contract.
So you are contracted to do that.
I was doing it for 13 hours, for 13 years. Then the doctor said I have a touch of bronchitis. That's why I leave that place.
A touch.
And like yesterday when you were telling us, if you went to a doctor, to the Medco doctors, and said that you were ill, they would sometimes say that you weren't and let you go back to work. Well, did you go to them to report that you have bronchitis?
I've asked my manager to change me from that plants to the all plants, where they all starts. So they say if ever I don't want to work, I must go out.
You must leave altogether.
I want to kick off. I'm coming a little cold, and I'm not going to stick very closely to what's outlined in the program. I'd like to just talk to you very briefly, give you an introduction to workmen's compensation in this country. The starting and most important point is that in South Africa, workers don't have the right to sue their employers. There is a popular perception that workers' compensation is a kind of a benefit for workers. It's something that's good for workers. Well, you get sick, you get injured, don't panic about it. You will be compensated by the Compensation Commission Act. It's no fault, so even if you're the cause of your own asthma or bronchitis or whatever the case is, don't panic, we're going to give you something. I want to turn your perceptions about workers' compensation upside down. I want to persuade you that workers' compensation legislation is established principally to protect employers and their insurers. It is a way, it is a mechanism whereby the cost, and let's confine ourselves to mining, the cost of mining can be externalized and passed on to workers and their families. I think the best way to demonstrate this is through a practical example. And we might go back to this example several times. And you could make 1,000 variations of it. Let's take a 40-year-old mine worker whose femur is smashed in a rock fall underground, caused by the failure of the employer to provide proper roof support. He recovers, but he has muscle weakness, his femur, which is badly shattered, his leg is perhaps a little shorter, it's perhaps a little skewed, the angles aren't perfect, there are plates and things in there. He walks like this. Now, he's been a mine worker for 20 years. He is no longer fit to do the work that he was doing underground. This limp and this weakness and the pains and the things that he experienced prevent him from handling a shovel and a wheelbarrow underground. He can't do that job anymore. Well, what's going to happen to this guy? Well, firstly, he'll be moved. His employer, he's going to go to hospital and they're going to do certain medical costs and the Compensation Commission will cover those costs. He'll be off work for a time. The Compensation Commissioner will make up 3/4 of his salary during that period in hospital. But when he gets back to the mine, they may, as a kind of a token gesture, put him on surface for a little while, sweeping the gardens, weeding, doing some kind of odd job, but in a very short while he'll be dismissed. Now, the guy's 40 years old, he's been a miner for 20 years, he probably doesn't have a particularly high standard of education, he is totally unsuited for any occupation that doesn't require physical fitness and strength which he no longer has. A claim for compensation is going to be submitted on this fellow's behalf, and I can tell you from experience that a fellow walking with a limp like this, with a galley leg, is probably going to be assessed at somewhere between 5 and 15% disabled. Now, if this mine worker was earning 2,000 rand per month, which is fairly average for a mine worker working underground, he's going to get somewhere between 5 and 15,000 rands compensation. He will then be dismissed. I can tell you that our employment law doesn't require a retrenchment benefit for workers who are dismissed for incapacity. He's going to get a lump sum amount of between 5 and 15,000 rand, and that's it for him. He's going to go back to Gamalpedi or somewhere in the northern province or the Transkei or any other place, and he's going to spend the rest of his, what would have been his working life, unemployed. That 5 to 15,000 rand isn't going to take him anywhere. With time, when he gets home, he's no longer able to do the things he used to do. He can't hunt with his dogs, which is quite a popular occupation here in the northwest, I believe. He can't maintain his house. He can't build a fence. His condition's going to deteriorate. Because of the twisting and so on in his leg, his hip joints are going to fail, his knees are going to fail. The Workers' Compensation Commissioner only pays you for your necessary medical requirements in the first 2 years. These failures are probably going to happen after 2 years. He will never receive the hip replacement or the knee replacement that he needs. He's going to be unemployed for the next 20 years. His children will suffer. Their prospects of completing their education are significantly reduced because there's no money. There's no money for school uniforms. There's no money for books. They're hungry. If he's got small children, the chances are very good they'll be malnourished. They will be physically stunted. If it's bad enough and the poverty is extreme enough, they'll be mentally stunted as well. The cost, the loss of earnings to him at about 2,000 rand a month. If you capitalize that, the actual cost to him is round about 300,000 rand is the capitalized value of this loss. It may be a little bit more, it may be a little bit less. If you then add the medical costs, which of course he won't incur because he doesn't have the money for it, and state hospitals don't do hip and knee replacements. But if you added those costs, you could add 100 or 200,000 rand, and if you exclude this kind of multiplier effect, you know, what is the cost to the children of not completing their education, of being malnourished, of being more susceptible to tuberculosis and other diseases? The cost to this worker probably runs out 700, 800, 900,000 rands. That's the value of the loss to this man. That's what it's going to cost this man. The employers are only going to foot the bill indirectly through the insurer of 5 to 15,000 rand, which is the compensation sum, and whatever immediate medical costs they had repairing his leg while he was in the mine. It is a tiny fraction of the real cost that's been imposed. You know, there is a cost to doing business. Employers aren't interested in the costs of doing business. They are only interested in the costs that they have to bear. The percentage of the cost that they must carry is what is of interest to them.
On the compensation side, because workmen, I've already told you that workmen in South African law don't have the right to sue their employer. However, they do have a theoretical right to sue for additional compensation if their injury or disease is caused by the employer, by the negligence of the employer. And this is a remedy we use quite frequently. We're trying to use it quite frequently to extract extra money from the compensation commissioner. The compensation commissioner then recovers that money from the employer. The maximum compensation to which you're entitled is the difference between what you normally get under workman's compensation and your actual financial loss. So there's no compensation for pain and suffering or anything like that. They calculate your financial losses, and then they make up the amount you receive from workman's compensation to your actual financial loss. Well, the first problem you run into immediately is exactly as you say, how do you calculate this? Now, I mean, what's the problem with a guy who's got asthma? That's all. If asthma is controlled and managed, it's no big deal. If you have medication, if you know how to use it, and you're regularly monitored by a doctor, you should be able to live a normal, productive life. Sure, you can't work in a vanadium factory, but you could become a rocket scientist, or there's only a range of alternatives open to you. How do you calculate what this worker's loss is? The truth is, he's not. His impairment, that's the term I was looking for. His impairment is minimal. His disability is huge. Disability being your ability to perform, a job. Impairment being the physical limitation. I'm visually impaired. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily disabled for the job I do. Maybe I don't have to see. So you have moderate impairments and big disabilities. Now, the compensation commissioner supposedly compensates you for disability. He actually means impairment. He compensates you for impairment, not disability, even though they use the word disability. Because the word disability is an individual thing. I am not seriously disabled by the loss of a leg. If I'm impaired to the extent that I've lost my leg, it's quite a significant impairment, but I'm not seriously disabled for my profession, my job. Whereas a mine worker who's lost a leg is impaired, but is also 100% disabled. I'm not 100% disabled. I want to tell you now, in South Africa, there has never been a prosecution of any employer for excessive levels of dust. There has never been, before Vantec, a health and safety inquiry into an incident of lung disease. Never. There has never been an inquest. Just going back to the statutory health and safety inquiries, in our law, you are supposed to hold an inquiry if somebody has an injury, loses a toe or a foot, or sprains his damn ankle. There has to be some kind of inquiry, but for lung disease, no. I mean, the law requires it, but it's never, ever happened. There's never been, as I said, an inquiry into a death due to occupational disease. You've got that at Vametco. You've got people who died. People believe they died as a result of exposure to toxic substances. Was there an inquiry into it? Never. These deaths are regarded as natural deaths. So you may have been murdered by your employer. He may have exposed you to toxic levels of what have you and killed you slowly over the years. There has never been an inquiry into a death through occupational disease in this country.
I'm Diane Dietrich from Barnard College. I am on the faculty in the Department of Environmental Science. And it doesn't take an environmental scientist to understand the plight of the mine workers. I would very much recommend an environmental assessment be done on the property, and I think that should be done as soon as possible. So I just want to say I'm very grateful for the mayor giving us the opportunity. I am filled with gratitude for that. I appreciate your presence here. I also appreciate the time that you have given to this issue. And I do hope that you take this seriously as we are here now. Thank you.
Honorable Acting Mayor, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'd like to thank all my colleagues here, particularly my colleagues from the Vametco plant that have been so incredibly gracious with their time and energy. I spent last week interviewing about 22 to 25 miners or former miners, and their complaints were horrendous. They complain of green tongue and bronchitis and asthma. There are certainly some very suspicious cases in terms of cancers. Also stomach ailments, and as Benedict said, the complaints go on. But what I think is particularly horrific is the impact not only on the miners themselves, but on their communities. And also we spent considerable time talking to widows, women who now have to fend for themselves in light of the tragedy that's beset their families. And so we are, as a community that's come from the United States, quite committed to working with the miners as well as the former Vametco workers to see how we can build a solidarity partnership with this community so that whatever skills we have can be offered to them. And I must tell you, it's a real pleasure to be in a new South Africa where the leadership is so sympathetic to workers' concerns. And I'd like to thank you as well for offering us your time and support this evening. Thank you.
I'd like to thank our Honorable Acting Mayor, Mrs. Molokwane, for granting me this opportunity to give a summary of the workshop report that we held yesterday and today at the Alpha Conference Center in Broederstroom. Firstly, our honorable guests were welcomed and introduced to us in the morning before all the proceedings could go on. So the first thing that we embarked on was that the main aim of the workshop was the plight of the unfairly dismissed workers of Vametco. And the issues raised were the unity of the stakeholders. And the stakeholders in this respect were the former workers and the communities involved, those who live around the mine. Secondly, it was envisaged that the environmental contamination of the situation must be dealt with. Step number 3 was to redress the imbalances of the past when employers had no respect for the lives of their employees. They were only interested in making profit out of their labor and then not taking care of their health and their livelihood. So the question of compensation was raised because the ignoring of the workers' health led to them contracting illnesses that led them to being unable for work, and the employers dismissed them, so they were unemployable. So their children couldn't go to school, they couldn't feed their kids because of being unemployable and not earning a living. So that led to them having a lack of resources and leading a life of hardships. Secondly, we were very thankful to our different benefactors, such as the doctors, students, lawyers, etc., who both are willing and offering to us their services with open-heartedly gratitude. We are very thankful to them. The role of the union was also put into question, the NAM, so that they could help us by mobilizing the current workers as the situation affects them too. They are working under dangerous conditions. They also contract illnesses, but luckily they can't work with us because they are afraid from the intimidation posed by management. Then it was time for me to present a detailed presentation of a Vametco processing chart that showed the delegates how Vametco operated to extract their minerals from the ore with dangers exposed to workers, such as chemicals that led to workers' tongues becoming green, sometimes black, and particles penetrating their skins. Sometimes people contracted eye diseases, etc., etc. The list is endless. So we also appreciated the aid that was provided by our Honorable Mr. Richard Spoor, who came and helped us because he got experience in dealing with such cases. So we are very happy for his contribution too. And then there is also one thing of great importance, which is the agreement that was signed between our country and the United States, which is called the Mbeki-Go Bilateral Commission on Environmental Issues. So we would like that to be taken to to be taken further so that both our communities can benefit from the improved situation that the workshop is trying to create. So we are asking our Honorable Mayor if he can take the matter further to higher channels so that we can be helped in due course. I'd like to thank you all.